All right, Alexander, let's do a real quick video, a fun video, an interesting video on Prince Harry and his statement that he made about the First Amendment. And it's really pissed off a lot of people in the U.S., and rightly so. And
Absolutely.
let me just read you a tweet from Candace Owen. I think this kind of sums it all up. This is an interesting tweet. Here it is. Sunday Riddle. How many more Hollywood-style interviews will Prince Harry and Meghan Markle give before they finally achieve the privacy they claim to be so desperate for? So there you have it. They're constantly, whining about their privacy. It's, how they want to get on with their lives. And then Harry comes up with just an idiotic statement. I mean, is it safe to say he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we said that before, but that's absolutely right. I'm going to make an observation, a quick observation here. Of course, we have nothing like the First Amendment in Britain. And the royal family, of which he is or was a member, is very accustomed to getting a degree of deference from the media, which is quite different from what celebrities get in the United States. And I suspect that finding himself in the United States, where he does not get the deference from the media that he is used to, Prince Harry is somewhat bothered. It doesn't surprise me at all. But what a foolish, imbecilic thing to say, actually. It does show, again, how little he understands of the country where he's chosen to live. And it also shows an extraordinary sense of entitlement. The idea that you can promote your business, you can give endless numbers of interviews, you can be a public personality, but at the same time, the First Amendment and all that it implies doesn't somehow apply to you, and that you're entitled to this extraordinary privacy and secrecy that you insist upon. I mean, I think that Harry, who I think is by no means a bad person, actually. I mean, he's, in my opinion, a well-meaning, if not perhaps very clever man, is being pulled along in much of this by his much cleverer and far more ambitious wife. I mean, I say that. And I think that he's out of his depth and is saying silly things.
Yeah. Just to give, if people aren't aware, Harry called the First Amendment bonkers. And, during a Thursday episode of Dax Shepard's The Armchair podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I should add that his wife, Meghan Markle, has been bringing law cases in Britain against British newspapers, especially, I think, the Daily Mail, under the very tough privacy laws we have in Britain, and has been winning those cases and making money from them because of things that they've written about her and about Harry. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, but all I would say is, of course, that she wouldn't be able to bring similar cases in the United States because of the First Amendment of the Constitution and the protections it confers. And I think there may be some element of frustration here on her part that what she's able to do in Britain, she can't do in the United States. But that's obviously communicated itself in some way to Harry, and it probably explains this frankly ludicrous thing that he said in this extraordinary inappropriate language. I mean, to refer to the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America as bonkers, to imply that the founders, the founding fathers of the United States, the people who drafted the Constitution, didn't know what they were about. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's so foolish that, I mean, I have no words to describe it. But, I mean, as you said, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, so perhaps we shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, the interesting part about this is that many people are coming out and they're upset in the United States about what Harry said. Who am I looking at? Meghan McCain and Hannity and Ted Cruz, and a lot of people are coming out. Piers Morgan also chimed in. He said, I don't think Harry could go lower than trashing his grandmother as she mourns Prince Philip, but the spineless, self-pitying twerp's attack on free speech makes him look bonkers, not the U.S. Constitution. That's what Piers Morgan said. But, it's really interesting that you have a lot of people coming out and they're now defending the First Amendment, free speech, when right now in the United States, as we speak, they are doing everything in their power, the institutions, the deep state, the government, Congress, to tear down free speech, So while I say that Harry may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, I'm not going to be too hard on Harry because, the people that are coming out and they're attacking Harry now are people that are actively working to take down free speech in the United States, deplatforming, censorship, all that stuff.
You're absolutely right. The First Amendment has never been under more sustained attack in the United States than it is today. And the people who are criticising these comments that Harry has made, many of them, not all of them, but many of them, are at the forefront of the attack on the protections conferred by the First Amendment. I'm sorry to say that the irony of that will be lost on Harry. He doesn't have the sense, the subtleness and the imagination to understand it. But what you say is absolutely true, and one shouldn't overlook that. Those people who talk about the importance of defending the First Amendment feel that the First Amendment applies to people like Harry, but they don't want to apply to other forms of speech that are and which they're busy, very busy, in all sorts of ways that we all know, trying to suppress.
So let me read you a statement from Harry. Once again, to be fair to Harry, I want to be fair to Harry.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are crapping on him. and he gets himself, he does get himself into these types of troubles. He's done it in the past. He has a history of this. Here's what he said. I don't want to start sort of going down the First Amendment route because that's a huge subject and one in which I don't understand because I've only been here for a short period of time. But you can find a loophole in anything and you can capitalize or exploit what's not said rather than uphold what is said.
Well, yes, you see, he made that point shortly. He said that just before he went on to say that the First Amendment was bonkers. If he'd stopped at the point where you had stopped, that would have been entirely unobjectionable. In fact, it would have been a correct and proper and entirely reasonable thing to say, and would have been uncontroversial. But then he went on to say that the First Amendment was bonkers, completely undermining the effect of those words which you've just cited. Now, I think that he needs to follow his own advice and not talk about things he doesn't understand and doesn't know what he's talking about. So, I mean, this is he's given that advice to himself, and I think from now on, really, he needs to follow it. I think fewer interviews also, by the way, would be a wise thing. I mean, he's just not good at this thing. He doesn't have the agility to respond to interviews, especially the way they're conducted in the United States. In Britain, when members of the royal family give interviews, which is rare, by the way, very rare, but when they do, the environment is so controlled. The questions are basically put to them in advance. They prepare their questions. They have teams of aides to help them. So they're supported through interviews. He isn't going to get that in the United States, and he's only going to land himself in trouble. So he should stop doing these interviews anyway. And if he does do these interviews, well, he should follow his own advice.
Yeah. Well, he asked for this. He came to the U.S. and now he's got to play ball in the United States. And playing ball in the U.S. is a different game. It's a different game than the U.K. And either he needs to adjust to it or figure out a way to adjust to it, or like you said, take himself out of the game because, the U.S. is a whole different animal than the U.K. And
Absolutely.
I think Harry is learning that. And the final note is, I don't know, maybe if Meghan was a more astute and attuned and caring wife, maybe she would also find a way to kind of pinch Harry or signal to Harry to stop. Like once he says something, she would know, okay, now it's time for him to stop because he's going to get himself in trouble. I don't know, maybe just maybe Meghan Markle can pull like what Jill Biden did, what Jill did with Joe, like when Joe said George W. Bush during that interview, and Jill was like, kind of learn from Jill Biden to help out the way she helps out Joe.
I entirely agree. I completely agree with the second point, by the way. I think that Meghan needs to help her husband an awful lot more than she's doing. And again, I'm using careful language, but I think you're absolutely right. I think that she needs to understand his limitations. and she needs to help him more, and she needs to put him in to prevent him getting himself into situations which cause him harm. But you know what this whole affair illustrates yet again is the fact that despite the fact that Britain and the United States do have the same language, they are also very different countries from each other. And I don't think Harry has understood that. The United States is very different from Europe. They may speak English, but they don't speak it in the same way that the British do. And they don't, and they have, to be straightforward about it, a much more vibrant democratic and free speech tradition that we have in Britain.
What is very quickly? What's the reaction been in the UK from this? Has it been a big story or not?
Oh, it's been quite a big story. It's been widely covered.
How did the people?
But I think they made exactly the same points that you were making, that he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer and he's getting himself into all kinds of problems, and that Meghan perhaps ought to be helping him more. And I mean, people are not unsympathetic perhaps, but they qualify that sympathy with the memories of the very real anger that the whole Meghan Markle Harry business did, and the damage it did to the royal family and to the Queen herself. So he has some sympathy, but not a huge amount. And remember, Piers Morgan is British, and the comments he made as a British journalist. Now, he's not perhaps entirely representative of opinion on this issue here in Britain, but there are an awful lot of people who agree with him too.
All right, we'll leave it there and let's just hope that Harry can stay out of trouble, man. Come on, Harry. Shape up. All right, you're playing ball in the United States now. The big leagues. All right, the big leagues of media. Oprah Winfrey. All right, we'll leave it there, guys. Go to our channels on Odyssey, on Super U, BitChute, and join our locals community. You'll find all those links down below and 10% off your Duran merchandise. Use the code REALNEWS at checkout. You'll find the link for that down below as well. Take care.